My name is Jill Nagy Reynolds, and I am with the SBA Columbus District Office. I'm very pleased to have Ryan Snyder with me today from the DLA Small Business Office, the DLA Land and Maritime. They will be participating in the virtual Ohio Business Matchmaker. They will be meeting with small businesses to discuss what DLA buys, but Ryan is going to go over that today so that hopefully participants in this webinar get a better idea about DLA and then help prepare for the matchmaker, which is on November 16th and 17th. So it's coming up. If you have questions, if you can send that through chat, I will be monitoring chat. So I will ask Ryan, I'll try and get it at an appropriate time so I'm not cutting him off mid-sentence or mid-thought. I try and wait for a time where I think that makes sense. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ryan. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. And while Sharon's pulling up the slides, a little bit about me in our office. So we have 7 or 8 folks in our office that our primary job is to recruit vendors to sell to the government. And in Columbus, Ohio, where I'm at, we have the Land and Maritime major strategic commands, and we're mostly looking for machine shops, sheet metal, tool and die, injection molding, electronics, casting, forging, things like that, to drawing, custom items, not a whole lot of commercial. So that's about me. Prior to coming to that group, I was a buyer in electronics mostly, but I bought all kind of stuff. And that's one of the requirements for getting into the office where I work now, is you have to have bought for a while so you can have that perspective. So go ahead and forward the next slide, Sharon. So this is my contact info. So we're very transparent. If you run into any problems trying to create logons, or when you're ready to quote or have questions about the drawings, things like that, that's where we can help, and we can get you in touch with the right people if we don't know the answer. We can have different conversations than the buyers can have. They're kind of limited. If it's an active solicitation, they're really limited on how much they can talk to a vendor. So that's when we can come in and maybe say some things that they're not allowed to legally, and walk you through some of that. So don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to set up some side meetings with you and your teams. If after you look through this slide deck with me, if it's still an account that you want to pursue, please reach out, and we can get some folks on your team, and we'll have conference calls and whatever it takes to get you through the process. Next slide. So here's a quick list of things we're going to cover, just to kind of give you a heads up. Next slide. Next slide. So, mission statements, I think, matter. So ours at DLA, Defense Logistics Agency, is to sustain the warfighter readiness and lethality by delivering proactive global logistics in peace and war. So we're not just an account. When you partner with DLA, you're partnering with the Department of Defense, and ultimately the warfighter out in the field that's fighting for freedom. So there's a patriotic value, I think, to our account. So I like to make that pitch, and I think it's a little bit more important. Not that your other accounts are not, but the quality and the timeliness of your deliveries, things like that, maybe mean a little bit more based on the folks that are in harm's way using this stuff, depending on it working properly and getting to them quickly so they can get back out in the field. Next slide. The vision: we are the nation's combat logistics support agency, global, agile, and innovative, focused on the warfighter first. I think mission, vision statements are important. We have them posted all over our building. There's that that subconscious value that we all kind of see it. We kind of bring it to fruition if we see it. So I'm a big believer in having these kind of statements and talking about them and having them out there for you guys to see. The way we work with DoD, it's like we're all under the DoD umbrella for funding, but we operate quite a bit like a vendor ourselves. So we sell to the Army, we sell to the Marines, and we charge a margin that's calculated annually. And that's how we're kind of self-funded that way. We kind of look at, even though it's all DoD money, we consider ourselves self-funding. So that maybe is a little bit more detail than you need to know, but the design seems to work, at least for now. So that's who we are. Next slide. So this is our strategic plan that we are right in the middle of. These are also posted all over the place and talked about frequently. We have 5 areas, 6 if you count the people and culture in the center, that we kind of put out there to visualize, shoot for, and target. Next slide. So a little bit of detail on a high level about DLA. So our sales, and I know is it real sales or is it just a shell game with money? But we consider it sales to the military branches are about 37 billion. So pretty far up there. If we were a Fortune 5, would be probably in the top 50 with that number. We have 9 supply chains with about 5 million items. And considering we manage 5 million items, it's very hard to manage the technical documents for that many items. So if you are looking at drawings, if you're a manufacturer and you're trying to quote something based on the drawing, sometimes we miss something in our scrub. We do a scrub a couple times a year from a technical standpoint. Sometimes we miss a few things. So if you see flaws in our tech docs, it's because we just have so many items to look through, and we're really not staffed to scrub maybe as good as we should, but government needs to be smaller, not bigger, right? So we kind of depend on the vendor to help us find those. If you do see errors, please let us know and we'll get them fixed, and then we'll resolicit. We support more than 2,300 weapon systems. So if you can imagine, each one of those weapon systems might have 100,000 or more NSNs. A helicopter, for instance, that's a weapon system. So there's going to be a lot of parts, spare parts that go into those weapon systems. And we're kind of, the auto parts or the spare parts store for the military. So think of DLA that way. 27,000 employees. We go all the way through storage disposal, all around the globe. And the bottom one there, we support 110 nations in foreign military sales. So we might sell Israel, for instance, some F-16s, and it's probably going to be different kind of avionics than our F-16s. But when we sell them, these planes or these tanks or whatever it is, we sell them DLA's service of supplying parts as part of that sale. So all that labor and shipping and all that stuff that goes into foreign military sales, that's all kind of rolled into the price they pay when they buy 10 tanks or 10 planes. The FMS goes into that, so that we do that purchasing as well. And you'll see solicitations sometimes that will have a foreign end customer sometimes. So that's where that comes from. Next slide. So this is just a quick gee whiz picture of our different buildings. Our building that we used to go to every day back before March is up in the upper left corner. It was built in 1996. Richmond, Virginia is where aviation is housed, and then Philadelphia is troop support, which is like uniforms and medicine and food, things like that. And then energy is co-located at DLA headquarters just outside of Washington, D.C. Next slide. So these are the small business office contact numbers and emails. So this will go to a general email box that's monitored and then distributed to one of us to get back with you if you have any questions. So please, this is a good one to print if you're going to do business with us. You want to have this handy. So really good slide number 9 there. Next slide. And this one is a little more detail on what the different strategic commands in DLA procure. Obviously, aviation has aircraft engines and airplane related things, but they also have all the bearings for all of the military vehicles, ships. So they specialize in bearings. Now, Land and Maritime, you'll notice electronics is listed there. So we buy all the electronics for the airplanes, even though, in theory they could reside at DLA Richmond. We thought there was value in centralizing the acquisition team for electronics for the expertise of the buyers, so they get to know the commodity, and also the technical folks get assigned to that team and they develop an expertise for those commodities. So it's not always exclusive to the command, the strategic center that we're located in. The product sometimes goes to support a different kind of weapon system, if that makes sense. Philadelphia, stuff to support the individual soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines. A big one for troop support there is the medical. Used to be, so the next one is energy to the right there. Used to be that fuel was our biggest spend, and recently as oil has dropped and we've kind of used more medicine. So the biggest spend shifted from DLA Energy to DLA Troop Support because of the medicine. The two kind of go back and forth, but right now it's medicine is our biggest spend as far as dollars. Just kind of gee whiz info. Any questions so far? Okay, good. Next slide. Next slide, Sharon.
Okay, it's for some reason it's not advancing.
Maybe go back one and forward.
It's not moving at all. Let me stop sharing and try it again. There we go.
Okay. These are a couple of other teams that we, acquisition teams that we have. Like I said, the bulk of our procurements are going to be in spare parts and spare parts business. But we have computers that we buy with, right? And so we have a team of people that that's their commodity, their service that they purchase is IT related services, software, hardware. And that team has a phone number there. The manager is in Philadelphia, but she has employees in the other at the other sites. So that's their email and phone number if you're interested in selling IT type services or hardware to DLA. Much smaller spend than our hardware buy. Like I said, the bulk of that 37 billion is parts for ships, planes, tanks, etc. But we do buy IT stuff, so that's where that is bought from. And then buildings, we have to put new roofs on our facilities or landscaping or asphalt. So we have a team that buys construction services, and that is their email and phone number. So again, a much smaller team, a much smaller spend, but we do buy that stuff, and there it is. Next slide. We also have DLA Distribution. They're located in Battle Creek. So you've heard of military surplus. If we decide we don't need a specific part anymore, we will put it into this disposition process. And then those folks, most times will group it into 2 or 3 pallets and put it on an online auction. And I'm not sure, but government liquidators might facilitate those auctions. I'm not sure, but that's where military surplus comes from. And then sometimes we need that material back. We decide, well, we need it after all, and we will buy it back, usually at a much higher price, because those surplus auctions, things go really cheap because they sell them in bulk. So Battle Creek handles that. They also handle, something's getting destroyed. There's environmental regulations, how that has to happen. That's those people. If there's a need to create a new NSN, that happens at Battle Creek as well. There's a lot of steps that have to happen prior to them creating the NSN. That's kind of the last step, but they're team, and Battle Creek is the team that actually keys it in to the system and creates the record in our system for a new NSN. So they do that. Strategic materials, there are some minerals and raw materials and metals that are unique and expensive and rare. So we have a team that buys just that stuff. And they're located at headquarters. But it's just the same rationale as having all of your electronics buyers on the same team. So you have the expertise, you have these people that understand the current surcharges and the market of the different items. So there's that. So if you're interested in selling us that, there's the phone number and materials for that team, a phone number and email. Sorry. Next slide. Next slide. So before you can sell, you have to get what's called a cage code. It's a 5-digit code that's assigned by the government that identifies you with the government. So it's kind of the license plate that we assign you. And that's done on sam.gov, which is now SAM Beta. Probably familiar with that. To fill out the application, and it's pretty long. It's about 23 pages of online application. To get that cage code, you have to have a DUNS number. So that's actually your starting point, is to get your DUNS number, because that'll be asked for when you get into the SAM website. Next slide. And there's the SAM website, and I believe it's fully migrated to sam.beta. But I'm pretty sure if you type in sam.gov, it'll direct you to SAM Beta still. But that's a recent change. But that screen that's showing on the slide hasn't changed. So that's what it looks like. Next slide.
Hey, Ryan.
Go
Can you
ahead.
hear me? Oh, I was going to ask, is there a cost associated with to getting the cage number?
No. And I think there used to be a cost associated with getting a DUNS number, but I don't believe there is anymore. And Jill might know that better than me. Jill or Sharon, do you know?
No, there's no cost, and if you need assistance in completing your SAM registration, the Ptacs are definitely available to help you with that. And
What is a Ptac? What is that?
We'll get to the Ptac. I've got a slide.
Oh, you do? Okay, because I tried to register. I've got a DUNS number, and then I went to the SAMs, but it took me, like you said, 23 pages and to get the cage code. And then they told me I had to pay a $549 yearly fee. And then I figured, oh my God, I got into a scam or something? So I just backed out of it. But
yeah, you did. You stumbled onto a scam. There are companies out there that will help vendors kind of get going with government sales. So you got to be really careful that it's sam.beta. That's the website you're using. And Jill's right. There's a procurement technical assistance center, a Ptac, in your local area that can come out and help you in person or over the phone.
okay.
Or our office, we're able to help with that as well. But you shouldn't have to pay anything.
no, the government does not charge for SAM registration. Now, I have heard that there's delays in getting the cage code. Sharon, you may know more about that. It's taking longer than usual for cage codes. Is that still occurring?
Yeah, Jill, it actually has been occurring still to this day. I just helped a client 2 weeks ago go through SAM registration, and she just within the last few days received her cage code, and she had no problems. Everything went through the IRS, and everything cleared right on time. So
And let's go ahead and introduce you. I don't think we have. So this is Sharon Hopkins. She is the OU, the Ohio University Ptac Program Director. So she oversees Ptac offices in Columbus, Dayton, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Akron, Athens, and Lancaster. So, and a lot of the Ptac counselors that are in those offices are on this call today.
Okay, great. I'm just afraid that, I spent all this time doing it, and I can't remember if they wanted tax returns, or I can't even remember all the paperwork I did, but I did it, and then I submitted everything, and then they wanted that $549 fee. So I'm just wondering, I probably just gave away everything to get hacked now. I think.
For your SAM registration, you shouldn't have to provide tax returns. You should just be able to look at your 1040 or whatever type of, if you're an S corporation, C corporation, or just take your gross income. Take figures from the last 3 years or 5 years and then divide that by 5 or 3.
I think like I said, I probably stumbled into the scam. So, but I hope they don't have anything that's pertinent anyways.
Okay.
But I will reach out to Sharon then, or you guys call Ptac, just to figure out how to get that cage code. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if it makes you feel better, I have not heard vendors complain about getting scammed or identity theft. If you're scared you provided too much info, there's obviously a risk there, but I do not hear that feedback. But I do hear other stories like you told where they ask for a fee. So you're not alone there, but I don't think.
And when you type in cage code or anything like that on the the internet, you get all these sites that look like government sites. That's why I was so confused. And and they don't really say anything. You fill out all these forms, and at the end, then they want the money. And I spent like you said, it's probably 23 pages to realize I was getting charged at the end for this yearly fee.
Yeah.
I'm going to put the National Ptac website in the chat. Or where are you located?
I'm in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, you're in Columbus. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's 2 Ptac counselors in Columbus. And I'll work to get. Do you have them handy, Sharon, that you could put it in the chat?
I can't.
Or maybe not, or someone. Oh, because I'm on my home computer. We'll get that to you.
Okay.
All right.
I can follow up after the presentation. What is your name?
Very good.
My name is David Lee.
Okay. You've attended some other events we've done, so I'll email you after this, David.
Okay. Thanks, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Oh, Sharon Smith just put in the chat the link to find your Ohio Ptacs.
Oh, I see it now.
Thank you, Sharon. All right, Ryan.
All right. So this screen here, this is kind of related to Jill's area. She works for the SBA. So there's a place where you can update your, we have a link where you can update your SBA profile. And that's very important that you let us know what commodities that you offer there, because it puts you in a database for buyers to reference if they're looking for vendors in a specific commodity. Next slide. So these are some of the items that you can enter: the NAICS code, the North American Industry Classification System code. It's kind of how we segregate the different commodities for various reasons. One of them is to determine if you are a small business or not. How many employees you have is based on that NAICS code, the threshold of being small or large. Keywords like nomenclature, bearings or seals, things like that. Where you're located. So you really want to maintain your profile because it gets accessed for this database. Next slide. and this is what we call it. It's the Dynamic Small Business Search Database, where buyers or DLA employees can go in and search for vendors in different areas. Say we're looking for additional sources in a specific commodity. This is one of the first places that we look. So
Hey,
there is
Ryan.
value to maintaining and putting as much detail as you can into your SAM profile.
And I just want to add that the dynamic small business search is attached to your SAM registration. There's not a separate user ID and password to access it. You access it through SAM. And there are certain categories that you can update, like certain categories within the SBA profile. And see that screenshot? That's actually inside of a SAM registration. So that's something that we get asked often is how do I access my SBA profile? It's through your SAM registration. And a lot of people don't know the importance of actually, some of it is some of the stuff in the dynamic small business search profile is imported from SAM, like your contact information, your NAICS codes, your address. But there's a section in there where you can add a capabilities narrative and keywords. Those are important because federal agencies use that for their market research. So the more detailed you are, like you can't, I think it's like 250 characters you can use inside of the capabilities narrative, but the more words that you can put in regarding your capabilities, the easier it is for agency market research people to find you. So I'm glad you brought that up, Ryan. Thank you.
And Jill, just for everyone's information, this screen you actually will see near the end of your SAM registration. So I think the very next screen is to submit your SAM registration. And this is the screen previous, so it's near the end.
And if you want to change the SBA profile, don't you have to go through and hit submit on every page to get to it?
Yes, if
So
you
it's
get
not
back.
intuitive.
Yeah, if you need to change something later, then yeah, once your SAM record is active, then you go back in and you have to go through every single page in your SAM registration to get back to that button. And then you can go in and make the changes you want to make.
All right, thank you.
All right. Next slide. So this is what it looks like when we pull it up, just so you know. Next slide. All right, so transitioning to another system that you need to register for. This is for DLA. And we call it the Dibs system, DLA Internet Bid Board System. So nothing too fancy about that acronym. But one of the first things you're going to get asked for is your cage code. So you got to start with the SAM and then come over to the Dibs and register over there. So
Can everyone mute their lines, please? I can hear someone talking. And I'm double checking to see if I can mute it myself, and I can't.
So there's the registration link. This is the home page for Dibs. This is what it looks like. So kind of take a mental picture of this. So you know you're at the right place when you're poking around the internet. And then there's that arrow is where you register. Next slide.
Okay. I'm going to have to, yeah, I'm going to have to stop sharing again and go back. I I figured out how to get in there and mute, but every time I go in there to mute somebody, then I can't get back. My screen doesn't advance. So sorry about that.
That's okay. So when you go into set up your Dibs profile, similar to the SAM profile, you want to
Are you okay, Ryan? Yeah, Ryan's locked.
Yeah, as far as it's like he lost his internet.
Yeah, he may have.
That's what happened when Shonda lost it a few weeks ago.
Well, and it looks like he's thinking, so that's why I didn't say anything. Okay, so he'll have to log back in.
Yes.
I mean, overall, this is amazing. You know, Zoom, you can't beat this technology, but it's not without its flaws. Just like all of us.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's just goes on how well or what kind of connectivity you have with the internet. So, you know, some of us have better than others. So
You have flaws too?
Oh, I meant everyone else. In fact, well, I probably have more flaws than not having flaws, but I embrace it. Will the slides be available online afterwards? Okay, so that's a question that came through the chat. Yes. The slides will be uploaded within a couple of days onto the Ohio Business Matchmaker website. Actually, I'll verify that with Ryan when he comes back on, but all of them so far have, all of the presentations have been uploaded after. You're on mute. We can see you.
I apologize. My my computer lost connection out of nowhere. All
Nope.
right, so these are all the things you can do on Dibs. These are accessible from the homepage. We have hyperlinks for all these areas. I'm going to point out a few things. The forecast is really nice. We try to give you a forward look at the NSNs. If you're interested in pursuing an NSN, you know, you want to see what the long-term sales might be. So that is the one that says SRVA, and we can get to, I think one of the slides has the homepage again. I can show you. And then the bottom one, or the next to the last, the SPRS, SPRS. That's another system you're going to have to register and log into periodically. That's our vendor scorecard. But you can access it through the Dibs home screen. But those are two really important links that we put there. The award history, that's really good to know. Anyway, next slide.
sorry, Ryan.
Ryan, we got the question if the slides will become available. Is it okay if we take these slides and upload them on the Matchmaker website?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're also located on the DLA Land and Maritime website. There is a small business link there where you can find them. We have a whole bunch of slide presentations for different categories: packaging, transportation. So a lot of good resources. But this this PowerPoint's there as well. Next slide. So a little bit of internal jargon, you know, we call the under 250, we call those requests for quotes, over 250 requests for proposals, because it's a little different. Your offer looks a lot different under 250 than it does over 250, and that's estimated. You'll notice that our most common type of procurement is under $4,000. So like I said, we're the auto parts store for the military. So a lot of small nuts and bolts and gun parts and car parts, tank parts. That's mostly what we buy. We do have the bigger, you know, the 10, 20 million and upwards opportunities, but most of them are small. Next slide. So this is how the different areas of DLA purchase: approved cage and part number. That's the scenario where we don't own the drawings. So unfortunately, we try to purchase the drawings when we buy a new weapon system, like you know, a dozen tanks or a new airplane or new ship. We try to get all the drawings for all the parts on that weapon system. That's always our agenda. But oftentimes the drawings are negotiated out during that initial procurement. And I'll get into that a couple slides later. But so we buy things based on approved cage and part number. And we can go through dealers, but it's got to be that approved manufacturer's part number. The next way we buy is fully competitive. That's where we do all the drawings and we publish those drawings with the solicitation. The next is source controlled. So we do, that's where we own the drawings, but we still want to qualify only certain manufacturers that go through like a vetting process to become approved to use our drawings and to manufacture the part. So that's the third way. And then the fourth way is a qualified product list, where a vendor applies to be added to as a qualified supplier for an NSN or a group of NSNs. Somewhat similar to the source control, slightly different. Anyway, so those are the four major categories of how we buy of an NSN and how it's procured. Next slide. So 85% of our solicitations are automated. So we have our Dibs system generates solicitations automatically and publishes them to the Dibs bid board. Not all of those are going to be awarded automatically, but 85% get published automatically. They do get evaluated by a computer, but they don't always get awarded by a computer. You can tell the automated solicitations because of the T or the U in the 9th position of the solicitation number. And then that bottom bullet, I was just talking about that. 15% of our NSNs are 1G items. Now 1G are the ones where we are fully competitive, where we own the drawings. So 15% is really low. And I don't like how low that is. And it might be up to 20% now. We're trying to do better at purchasing the drawings when we buy a new weapon system. But here's what happens since it's kind of that season. So say we're buying a dozen helicopters. That's a really big procurement, and there will be a contracting officer assigned to that procurement. But the amount of dollars involved in that buy warrant that it's done through the Appropriations Committee in Congress. In many cases, I'm not, there's exceptions, but this is a lot of times how it works. So this committee reviews the proposals. It's congressmen that are elected that are on that committee, and they select some vendors they want to negotiate with. And one of the first things that a lot of these vendors—
It's disappointing how dumb and quote unquote evil half of the population of America is.
Thing Factory, you are unmuted.
I will, excuse me, I'll go in and
Okay, I'll send him a chat.
Who was that?
say I can mute them again, but I'll have to stop sharing and go back again.
Yeah, well, I think it's in the best interest of us to get that muted.
Yeah. Well, I'll get back to my—
Oh, they are muted.
Okay.
You gotta— that was kind of funny. So say this vendor comes back and they say, I can trim off $5 million or $10 million off of our price, but we want to retain rights to the drawings. And it's an election year. It sounds good at the time. So the Appropriations Committee might make that decision to allow the drawings to be negotiated out of that deal. So, sounds good. It's a soundbite to their constituents, but then DLA and the government, we kind of take it in the shorts for 20 years because we have to buy only from that company. And yeah, there's a process to have other vendors added as approved sources, but it's arduous and it takes a lot of time. So for a while, that initial vendor is going to have exclusive sales for those parts. So that's how that number gets down to 15% of the items where we own the drawings. So I hope you understand that. It's not ideal, but now you understand how we get there. Next slide. So we are, I showed you the major areas: aviation, troop support, land and maritime, energy. We do have detachments that are smaller all around the world, but some of our bigger detachments are listed here. We have DLA Warren, it's near Detroit, and they're co-located with US TACOM. You might have heard of TACOM. Tank and Automotive Command are located in Warren as well. So there's some contacts at that location if you're interested in those commodities that go on vehicles or tanks. Next slide. And here are some of the other detachments for that are based out of Land and Maritime, but they're remote. Aberdeen, Maryland, and Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. And contact info for those. Mechanicsburg's Navy, Aberdeen's Army. So One's ships, one's vehicles. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, here's my slide on the Ptac. That's what Sharon is. So there's the website there that was put on the chat room. These are free resources, as well as my office and as well as Jill. We're free, but they're located locally, so they can sometimes come out to your facility and sit down at your computer with you. And I'm not sure how that's working with the pandemic, but that's pretty common in normal circumstances. And they can walk you through some of these processes all the way through shipping the product and getting paid. You know, that's what their job is. They're a really big extension of the DLA home offices. It's a good way to look at it. And we actually fund half of their funding. I think about half of it comes from DLA. So we're huge partners with the Ptac organization. Next slide. So I talked about our office, and just kind of circling back, these are some of the things that we can do for you. So keep us in mind, you're not out there all alone, you know, flapping in the wind. It's very, very difficult to learn. Some vendors do it completely by themselves. I don't know how. It's very difficult. And you know, one of the reasons I believe it's difficult is that we buy our systems the same way we buy parts, you know, where price is the primary factor. So a lot of the systems that you're going to get into and access for the different parts of the process, you know, the drawings and transportation and getting paid, and it could be a lot more user friendly, but that would also cost a lot more money, if that helps. So just kind of keep that in mind, why it feels difficult. It's, you know, because the government's interested in saving money. And also keep in mind that that scares off a lot of other vendors. So maybe your competition will be less going after us as an account. You know, you might not see as much competition as you would in the private sector selling the same kind of parts. So those are a couple things to keep in mind. We are a resource to help. We have the Ptacs, SBA. So all these free resources are there to help you through the process. It's very difficult, and you have to have a lot of patience and time to get comfortable doing it. So we know that, and that's why we're here. That's why we do these webinars. So are there any questions so far? I'm almost done.
Can you talk, I get this question often, how does DLA buy services like IT services or like administrative services? How would they find out about that?
So I put up that slide where we have teams that buy IT services. Let me see the slide number.
Especially in Ohio, there's a lot of IT companies. It's bought out
Slide
of
number 11 has the contact info for, excuse me, for IT services and also construction services. So
Is that 11 or 9, Ryan?
slide number 11.
Oh, 11, okay. Okay, does anyone have any questions? If you do, just send them through the chat, please. And Ryan, are you still doing the TKO trainings? Or is the small business
Yeah.
office?
Yeah, I think there's a slide coming up on that. We just had one yesterday,
Okay.
and those are what's nice about the pandemic is we're able to offer more of them. They're a little bit. What Jill's talking about is what we TKO. It's an acronym for Training, Knowledge, and Opportunities. And we used to do them in Columbus. It was a 2-day seminar, and all the subject matter experts would come down from their desks, and we'd have a room full of vendors, and we'd talk about packaging and becoming an approved source, drawings, casting and forging, and just a great list of topics. So we now do it virtually, and it's a 1-day training. The downside to that is we lose some of the topics, and then, obviously I think there's value in being in person that's lost. Because another thing that we would do is we would set up meetings with manufacturers or dealers in certain commodities. The buyers would come down and meet with the vendors outside of our training room, and get a face-to-face thing going and exchange business cards, all that. So that was another plus to having it in person. But we're able to do more of them virtually. So I think the next one's going to be in January.
Okay.
We just had one yesterday, and I think I have a slide about the TKOs coming up. But so if you want to advance the slides again, Sharon, I think we're on 20 or 30.
And we have a question.
We're on 31. Next slide. So
Okay.
these are some more contacts. There might be a couple repeats from other earlier slide, but so you'd have another slide with how to get in touch with us.
And Ryan, we have a question. Hi, I'm in Northeast Ohio. Would I meet with a local Ptac office in Northeast Ohio for military agencies? Or do we reach out to the group represented today in Southern Ohio? Okay, that is a Ptac question. So yes, there is a Ptac in Northeast Ohio. That would be Cleveland or the Youngstown. It depends on where in Northeast Ohio you're located, but there is a Youngstown Ptac office still, isn't there, Sharon?
Yes, there is one, and if you go to that website that Sharon Smith put in the chat, you would be able to find your closest Ptac. And we have actually several in Northeast Ohio. We have an office located in Akron. We have one in downtown Cleveland, and then we have one at Lakeland Community College. And then, of course, Youngstown State that is located in Youngstown.
Okay, that was the question.
Okay.
So I think we got one more slide.
Okay, there it is.
So here's the we do these webinars all the time. They're on our website, and you can register for them there at that link at the bottom of the slide. As you can see, we just had one yesterday, and I think we're going to take December off, and the next one will be in January, which is nice because we used to take November, December, January, or no, it was December, January, February off for the weather. So people didn't have to travel to to Ohio. But now with this virtual environment, we're going to just keep rolling and just take some time off for the holidays. I think now that can always change, but I think yesterday's was the last one until January. But those are some of the topics. They're not all the topics. And then we also do webinars on those topics that you can keep an eye out for on that same link there. Those will all be listed on that same link to register for. So they're shorter, just one topic instead of a whole day of several topics.
And we got another question. What does the application process to be added to a QPL entail?
Well, we just had a webinar on that not too long ago. But it's basically that we take a look at your company and certain products that you've made and your quality record with other vendors. There might be a site inspection where we come out and take a look at your place. But I'm not the expert on that, but that's a webinar that we do maybe once a quarter. So keep an eye out for that. That is also covered in the TKO that will be coming up in January. But if you want to email me separately, I can put you in touch with some people that give that training that work in that area, and they can answer your questions more specifically. Maybe help you get started with the application.
I'll put your email address in the chat. What is it?
Ryan.Snyder@dla.mil.
Okay. All right, I just got it in there. Okay, does anyone else have any questions for Ryan?
All right.
Well, I don't see anything else going through the chat right now. I want to say, hang on. Thank you very much for your time today. I feel like every time I hear it, I learn more. So, and you'll be at the Matchmaker. Well, you'll be attending virtually. If anyone has any questions, just go ahead and reach out to Ryan, or if you have any Ptac questions, you can either send it to me or to Sharon Hawkins, and we'd be happy to get back with you. All right.
If you see my name for the Matchmaker, we can have a more personal one-on-one discussion. But also, if these commodities that I described are not you, chances are you have affiliations with those types of companies. So we're always looking for more vendors and to increasing our supplier base. If you have more vendors involved in quoting, that leads to more competition, which leads to lower prices as you, the taxpayer, maybe quicker delivery for the warfighter so they get their materials faster. So you're doing your duty if you can send some folks my way via that Matchmaker that's coming up on the 17th and 18th. Again, sheet metal, tool and die, welding, fabricating, injection molding, electronics, gun parts. We buy a lot of gun parts in Columbus. Hopefully I talk to some of you more then, or maybe some of your colleagues on that virtual Matchmaker. Thank you.
All right. Very good. Thank you. All right, Sharon. I think that concludes the webinar.